I'm Carrie Adams, and you're listening to Carrie's Connoisseurs, coming to you from Solid Gold Podcasts. Here we talk to the movers and shakers, the drinkers, the dreamers, and all the people who make it happen in the liquor and luxury industries from around the world. Today, in my studio, I've got two Ferreiras, which is something we need to speak about. But I've got Jane Eades and I've got Anne Ferreira, and we're going to be talking bubbly, really, because that's what they both make. So Jane and Anne, welcome to Carrie's Connoisseurs. How are you?
Good. Great to be here. And lovely to be with you, as always, Carrie.
Always, Jane.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Jane Ferreira Eades. Are you related to Pete?
No, I'm related to Anne.
You're related to Anne?
Yeah, we're the two cousins.
We truly are.
But where does the Ferreira... So you and Peter were Ferreiras?
I was not. My mother was a Ferreira and is married to his sister to Jane's father.
How much did you drink last night?
We did hit acid. Wine bar. No, so Jane's...
My dad and Annie's mother are siblings.
Okay.
Ferreiras.
Yeah, and they Ferreiras. And you married a Ferreira.
And I married a
Ferreira.
No incest. No incest whatsoever. We the grand Ferreiras, and he married into us.
Okay, good.
So we are the two cousins.
I looked when I was reading up about what I was going to talk to you about, and I saw Jane Ferreira Eades, and I thought, could maybe.
Yeah.
There it is, guys.
We are
they
cousins.
are related. So we're going to have to be careful not to get too excited and speak over each other all the time, because there's so much to talk about. For everybody to know, Jane's family had a farm called Klein Optenhorst, and she very foolishly decided to take over one of the brands, turn it into the bubbly, and call it Dainty Bess, which we all know and love. Have we got a Dainty Bess? Here. The prettiest bottle on the shelf, Dainty Bess. That's Jane's wine, and it's bubbly and it's gorgeous. We're going to talk about that. Anne is married to Bubbles Ferreira, and for anybody who needs an introduction to Bubbles Ferreira, you should be listening to this podcast. Everybody needs to know who Peter is. He's a gorgeous, gorgeous king of bubbles in South Africa. Done more for bubbles, I think, than most, although... The Milans will probably fight with me about that.
I think they all love each other.
They do love each other. They do love. However, suffice to say that we're in a bubbly space. So Anne and Pete have got Ferreira. Is it called Peter Ferreira wines?
Yes.
Peter Ferreira wines, which is something quite separate from the thousands of litres of Graham Beck bubbly that Pete produces on an annual basis. And then we've got our Dainty Bess. Let's start with Jane. Klein Optenhorst, family farm.
Yeah, my parents bought that in 1987. They were initially. I grew up in Johannesburg, so.
Are you both Rodin girls?
No, I don't.
St. Mary's. Much better academics.
I can concur.
Attest, yeah.
Yeah, and so we moved down in 1987. I was quite young. I was sort of finished the tail end of my high school. I went from St. Mary's to Huguenot Hoërskool, which was lovely. I really loved that.
Did you have to do it in Afrikaans?
Yeah, I did. There was an English class, about 8 of us in the English class, and the rest, everyone else was Afrikaans and from farming families.
And why did your folks decide to go down and farm?
It wasn't really a farm, it was a garden, Carrie. You couldn't really call it a farm. It was a garden. And my mother had this dream to build a beautiful garden. And
she did.
She did, yeah, very much so. My father was also, he shares the dream, I suppose. But he did plant a little bit of Pinot Noir as well, because he also quite likes wine. So it was about 1/4 of a hectare of Pinot Noir he planted there.
And it's like putting a rat trap in the roof. Hey? Once you get caught in that trap, bang! Yeah. You can't stop yourself. No. And then I think a few hectares probably went to, let's go and look and we'll lease a vineyard somewhere else. And let's see if we can't steal some bubbles from Pete and Anne. And hey?
It was a bit of a rat trap. It kind of evolved over time. And it was definitely, at least Pete and Anne's fault that we started this project.
Well, I just was going to say that us three girls in a studio together can only spell trouble because
Capital T.
there are not many. Well, there are not many more girls in the wine industry nowadays, but there are a few who are like old diehards in the wine industry. Most of their name starts with a T. So you got the other Ferreiras involved in winemaking, and then your folks sold the farm.
They sold it. So Peter helped us initially, and then my parents sort of decided to scale down a bit. They sold in 2016. And so obviously having made bubbles with Peter and Anne's help over the years, and, enjoyed having this product and really loving it, and had lots and lots of celebrations that sort of,
Required it. Yes.
I decided I wanted to carry on making it because it just, had this connection to this place where I grew up, which I loved very much. And so I bought the business from them. I bought the stock. And
Yes.
they'd sold the farm, so I couldn't call it Klein Optionhorst anymore. So Dainty Bess is a rose that my mum used to grow in her garden.
It is the prettiest rose. So everybody who knows me knows that of the many passions that I have, roses is one of them, or are one of them. Roses are. Yeah. The rose is one of them. And when I first met with you and we tasted Dainty Bess for the first time, long time ago, and you told me about it, I went into my rose book to go and have a look. It is the prettiest rose.
Yeah, it really is lovely.
It's like a little tea rose, and it looks almost like it's a baby little pink rose with single petals. And it looks almost like those roses that those clever ladies do on icing, old-fashioned icing wedding cakes, hey? That's what it looks like. It's so delicate.
Yeah.
Too pretty.
Lovely wine,
so
lovely rose.
We've got it on here, hey?
Yeah, the label has got a
all the way
little...
around Dainty Bess. It's just the prettiest, and so it's straight Pinot Noir.
100% Pinot. Yeah, so we started at Klein Optionhorst. We had the tiny little vineyard my dad planted, and one harvest we just had it was a really difficult harvest. We didn't have enough to fill a tank. So fortunately, James Downs at Elgin, he had some extra Pinot Noir. So he very kindly said, you can buy some extra from us, which was really kind of him, because, that is some of the best fruit in the country.
Yes.
So we bought, and that's how we started introducing the Elgin element.
Yes.
So that was a couple of years. And then when my parents sold the farm, I wanted to carry on buying the Wellington fruit, but unfortunately the new owners didn't really have a fix on how to look after that vineyard.
But you shouldn't have any problem purchasing. Just so as all of you know, these girls, we like to let them think, but they both got famous husbands. So Jane's married to Christian Eades, who's very famous in the wine industry, and you don't want to get on the wrong side. Or infamous, actually. But Jane's actually more famous, but we don't tell Christian. And Anne is married to Pete, who is uber famous. Yeah. So I suppose from that, because we let them think that they're better than us.
They ride on our coattails.
You are two of the most famous girls in the wine industry. That's the deduction I'm making.
Our husbands have us to thank for that.
Absolutely. So you couldn't get the Wellington fruit?
No. So looked around and actually had a tasting, a base wine tasting that Peter puts together every year for the whole industry. This is one of the things that makes him incredible. He's very inclusive, and he invites everyone around. So we did this base wine tasting, and at that point, one of the wines I tasted was from a vineyard in Stanford. So I approached the owners of that farm and asked them if I could possibly purchase a couple of tons from them. So I got some Stanford fruit and then a little bit from Robertson as well, just to bring in some warmer fruit, some warm
And where are
climate
you
fruit.
vinifying it all?
Vinifying it at Avondale in Paarl, which has got a brilliant cellar.
Avondale is Jonathan.
Yeah.
He's gorgeous. He puts cow's horns and things in the ground, and he's like very organic, schmorganic.
Yeah.
And he wears like a Stetson, and he's a real boy. We love Jonathan. So you've been making your Dainty Bess at Avondale, for a couple of years?
Since
4 years?
2016 was the first.
Is it that long ago that they sold?
Yeah. Goes quickly. It's 5 years ago.
I can't believe
Coming up for 6 years, yeah.
I know, I keep saying I think I've got about 10 summers left, but that was like 20 years ago. I actually think I've only got about 4.
Please God not.
And Jane, production-wise, how many
Tiny.
bottles?
It's very small. It's roughly 2,500, 3,000 sometimes. It's a side hustle for me. It's not my full-time gig. Unfortunately, it's not big enough to do that. And it's a kind of a catch-22. You know, if you want to make it into a viable, economically sustainable business,
I know.
you need to really focus. But it's too small to kind of get there. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
Well, in her spare time, she's also the national sales manager, hey?
Something
for
like
Ex
that.
Animo, which is Ex Animo is a gorgeous company. It just suits my sort of head, my crazy bohemian headspace well. Dave's done really, really well with their business, I think, and he's got all the vagabonds and the renegades and the left of centres and what
the blue
have
chip.
yous and the blue chip here. They sit in a stable called Ex Animo, which is a company that they've formed to do sales and distribution of wines. And so Dainty Bess is available through Ex Animo, but I think what I'm going to do after this is we're going to make a little plan, if Dave's cool with it.
Yeah.
And we'll pop some Dainty Bess into the Solid Gold shop. And everybody, if you want something, you can just pop on there and buy it. It's gorgeous. Should we tell them what it tastes like?
We can try, yes.
Explain to us.
Okay, I'm going to explain. It's
on entry. What do you get?
It's so firstly the color this year. This is the 2018 vintage, and it's a lovely sort of salmony, light pale salmon color. The palate is quite sort of earthy. It's got a spiciness to it. Well, the aromatics, quite spicy, and then you get a bit of a hit of raspberry. So it's a much more red berry fruited,
lovely
flavor profile. And then
how long are you leaving it
on the lees?
On the lees.
This one is just a month short of 4 years.
Wow, that's an expensive business trainee. Does Christian know about that?
He doesn't have to know.
No. Don't. Let's not tell him. We're on a sort of national broadcast here, but we won't tell him. Mm-mm.
Yeah, so just a month short of 4 years. And this, I suppose, is the advantage of having a job to kind of...
Yes.
That is, you know, I don't have to depend on this. And I can make the style of wine that I really would like to drink, which is takes a lot of time.
And do you make it a little bit sort of differently, or is it always 100% Pinot?
100%, yeah. At this point, it's 100% Pinot.
Yeah.
I don't really think I'd like to incorporate Chardonnay at this stage. I like the idea of
You're
having
speaking to two Chardonnay freaks.
Listen, I love Chardonnay, but I might make
Your
a Chardonnay.
Going,
Sorry.
You have to sit still.
I love Chardonnay, but I like the expression of just Pinot on its own. I think it's quite interesting to kind of get the fruit expression, the varietal expression.
It's very pretty. And it's very fresh, but fruity at the same time. I love it. It's clean and tidy. It's beautiful, bubbly, everybody. So that's Dainty Bess.
Yeah.
Then we're going to move on to Anne. How did Peter Ferreira Wines come about when he was really working for Graham Beck, like flat out? And we all know Graham Beck. I knew him well.
Yes.
How did you manage to do a side hustle within a Graham Beck stable?
Well, I mean, you know Graham Beck, and Peter started with him and started Graham Beck for him. So, I mean, he's been there now for, 34 years? And Peter thinks he owns Graham Beck.
Well,
and
everybody thinks he owns Graham Beck.
And he's always had the freedom to do what he's felt is the right thing for the farm, very much thanks to Graham and Rona. And then obviously Anthony, his son, who's now involved with the company. But in 2012, we suddenly realized that they would be retiring Peter at 60, which was like marching and going to be around the corner very soon.
One of those last 10 summers.
Yeah, exactly. That came 20 years ago. So we panicked and we went, well, Peter without a bubbly project is just
It's not Peter.
No, Peter is... I always say he's the happiest person I know. He's the one person who gets up and can't wait to get to work. If he can do bubbly all day and every day, I mean, he makes wine in the UK, he's made in America for 5 years. If he can do a fourth harvest, he'd find a gap somewhere as well.
Yeah, he's terribly energetic about his bubbles.
Yeah, and passionate, and shares it with everybody. He
Why
wants
is the best?
everybody, and I think he wants everybody to make great bubbly. I mean, in fact, he always says when he's selling Graham Beck in America, it's such a lonely road to travel because there are no other couple of Sikhs that have got quite as much stock and presence in the market.
You know, the other thing is that I was saying to somebody the other day, there is a massive worldwide shortage of champagne. We make some of the best bubbly in the world in South Africa. We really do make good bubbles. And I've been very spoiled and very lucky and privileged to drink some of the greatest bubblies in the world. And I honestly do believe that we put so much time and effort and intellectual capital into our bubbly industry that people will go a long way to find as good a quality bubbly as what they're going to get out of South Africa. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you can buy thousands of millions of gallons of Prosecco and Cava and whatever. It's nice and it's fun and it's really, really big in Europe and England at the moment. I mean, Jonathan, my son's living in England, as you know. Everybody drinks Prosecco.
But not really the quality that you can get or value.
Yeah, or the value. I mean, on balance, what are we paying for a bottle of bubbly here? 280 Rand a bottle or something?
Yeah.
Anything French starts at around about 450 and goes up to in the thousands, you know. So just a bit of an interlude. Everybody, if you go to the shop and you can't find the French bubble that you're looking for, don't be shy. Go and have a look for a South African one on the shelf. It's really, really worth a try. So,
Agreed, yeah.
When was that he sort of...
So that was actually 2011. And so he approached Graham, who was as only he could be, and he said, of course, this is important. You're very welcome to do it. So in 2012, we made our first vintage, which is 100% Pinot Noir, 100% Chardonnay. Sorry, Jane's got me on the... because we love Chardonnay. It's 2,500 bottles. And then the following year, we added a rosé, which is 100% Pinot Noir. And then in 2017, we've added a blend, a cuvée, which is 70% Chardonnay.
Isn't there an Ultra Brut somewhere?
They're all extra brut in style.
Are they?
Yeah. So, but the long and the short is I own the company.
Of course you do.
Which means...
As you should.
I own my husband. And I have a very lovely contract with Graham Beck, who I also worked for at a time. So I have a lot of love and loyalty.
I've never asked you, are you a winemaker?
I'm not, but I should be, seeing as I've slept next to one for many, many,
and there's
many
an
years.
osmotic process that can happen. Hey?
Exactly. It's like me becoming a wine writer.
It
just happens.
It just happens.
So in theory, I own Peter. But he still belongs very much to Graham Beck. Yes, I keep reminding him. Whip him into shape.
And he was quite cheap back in the day.
Came as a bargain.
He's a sweetheart.
Yeah, and I mean, we both have such a passion for bubbly. I think we must be the biggest consumers of bubbly in South Africa. We like the champenoise. We drink it every day, all day.
Do you?
Yeah, always. Well,
you know, it's a really good drink for anybody who doesn't want to get too drunk, because your alcohol levels are much lower than other wines.
Less sugar.
Much less sugar, so you can lose weight if you drink Dainty Bess and Peter Ferreira. And besides that,
you can drink it at 11 in the morning.
It gives you the same. Well, yeah, people have got that excuse. They say we're going to mix it with orange juice, which we don't want to do, those people. But you can mix it with orange juice if you want to. But it gives you the effect. You can pretend you're drinking sparkling water all day. Because it's clean. You can almost brush your teeth with it. It's nice and clean and fresh and whatever. And it doesn't make you that. Although a lot of people say, champagne gives me a headache. Do you get that? I
do, and what they forget is that they've been drinking other things on the side, or they're not necessarily drinking Méthode Champenoise or Cap Classique. So
something that's had a bit of a blast of CO2 in it, like a Coke bottle.
Exactly.
But I always say to everybody, they say, I can't drink that, I'm allergic to sulfur. Or, I don't know why, it's all the chemicals in the wine. And I say to them, sorry, darling, it's actually the alcohol that you're allergic to. If you just have 1 or 2 glasses, you don't get that headache and you actually wake up feeling fine. It's got nothing to do with the sulfur or anything else. It really hasn't.
You're absolutely 100%
So
right.
that's a bad excuse. And in fact, if they're allergic to sulfur, they can't eat the veggies from half the shops that get put into a plastic bag with of sulfur or something in them.
The dried fruit they buy.
Everything full of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now you've got loads and loads and loads of Peter Ferreira. You're selling all over the place. You're making 3 different types of bubbly. Where is it available?
Well,
Other than Norman Goodfellows, we know it's there.
So obviously online through Ex Animo, and then various kind of more bespoke, I would say, wine shops. And then I've got a very nice distribution within the fine dining restaurants and some of the wine bars, which I love.
And
so,
where's your sort of focus? Do you think we need to, do we need to educate our population more as to drinking bubbles? Or is there quite a big wave of bubbly drinking that's happening, do you think?
I think it's definitely, there's a huge wave of bubbly drinking and there's a huge wave of champagne drinking. But I think if you think of when Graham Beck started in the early 90s,
There's none.
you know, there was almost no Cup Classiques available. And if you think of how many, I think there are almost 200 people making Cup Classique now, you know, and very few people, I think, would ask for a carbonated brand anymore.
No.
In the good old days, if you wanted a high quality, it was Niederberg, Charmant method.
Yeah, exactly.
In the 80s,
I
showing
do
my
know.
age.
I sort of, I encourage everybody to start off drinking demi-sec because it does make you feel like you're drinking cold drink, and it gets you used to that mouthfeel of bubbly and the headiness and the celebration of drinking a bottle of bubbly. It's absolutely divine. Did you drop your glasses?
No, no. Sticky.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Didn't stick it enough, yeah.
Well, then we got no reaction from Callum, so you must be okay.
It's cut in between words, so it's okay.
Okay.
But I think, but
So demi-sec is a goodie to start people off because sometimes you drink a first sip of Brut and you almost need somebody else to take the first sip for you. Do you know what I mean? It can be a bit sort of zingy. So if you start drinking demi-sec, I think it gets people to fall in love. And I unashamedly love demi-sec.
And a well-made demi-sec is delicious. If it's
gorgeous.
got a good acid sugar ratio, it's actually very beautiful if it's well-made.
I agree with you. And they're different. Let's tell them the different levels of sugar that goes into bubbles, Janie. What do you do for Brut?
So Brit is 12 grams of sugar and below. Yeah. So it's quite a lot.
liter.
Yeah. I mean, also with sugar, acid. The balance is very important. So you have depends what your acid is. So 12 grams might seem like a lot, but if your acid's very high, it actually is just causing the wine to be. It needs that sugar to balance it. So,
And if we go to demi-sec, it could go up to it's like 30 something. Hey?
I actually looked the other day, but it
35,
goes high.
I think.
I think it's even higher.
35. In fact, 35 is low for demi-sec.
Thick, yeah.
So if you can get a demi-sec that's got, not that we want to be one of those people who goes and says, excuse me, what's the RS on this? Or, we don't really care. But we want a demi-sec that is on the lower end of the sugar scale. So we want it slightly sweet.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think to answer your question about kind of South Africa and bubbly and Cup Classique and stuff, it is changing. People are looking, they're definitely a core group who are very serious about the bubbly that they're making, winemakers, where it's not just an addition to their range. You know, there's Silverthorn, there's Coolmont, obviously Graham Beck, the Valeras, the bigger people, Charles Foxes, for instance. But I think what we're also finding, and you'll see that all my bubblies, Jane's bubblies, are all extra dry, so 6 grams and below. And there's definitely a swing. I think the more people are drinking it, the more they're understanding it. And one of the points of differentiation for us as a Peter Ferreira brand, for me, is Lee's aging. So I think I'm probably the only brand that's got all the SKUs, with a long Lee aging, which is 6 years plus.
That's hectic. I don't think there are many method champagne. I don't think there are many houses in France who are leaving their non-vintages on the lees for 6 years.
No.
In fact, I don't think there are any.
No.
It's too expensive. You
Well,
can't
certainly the
have thousands.
non-vintage, obviously the sort of reserve cuvées,
Yes,
obviously
absolutely,
they have
yeah.
to, but
Yeah.
I don't know what
The legislation in
2
South
years,
Africa
isn't it?
is less, I think, but they push it to about 3 years often. The Grand Marques in Champagne, but it's not. But no, to get it that kind of length of time would not happen for a non-vintage type of champagne. And the problem is, I think a lot of the Cap Classique producers would like to actually keep their wines on the lees for a lot longer.
Well, if you can
But
afford to,
the
it's
cost
wonderful.
factor, and of all wines to produce, it's probably the most complex. In fact, it is, and the most expensive.
Well, something can go horribly wrong in the cellar, and you might get a complete and utter sort of miss-us, where nothing, you don't get a bubble at the end of the day. Then what do we do? So you can sort of carbonate it if you need to, but it's not ideal. So it's risky, and it involves that same art and craft that I continue to bang on about. Winemaking I love it for its art and craft. It's an amazing thing. You can't just go and make wine.
No.
You can, but it's not going to be nice.
Yeah.
So that art and craft that is attached to bubbles in a bottle is quite extraordinary. We absolutely love it. Then Annie, Graham Wirtz, Capensis, one of the nicest Chardonnays in the country.
I agree.
That's
yes.
another man that you own.
I do. I'm just going to have to tell his wife, Nikki, but
I'm
yes.
sure she knows. I'm sure she knows
She
already. Give us a quick thing. It was Jackson Family Wines.
Yeah.
Graham Wirtz was a winemaker here. He went off to do a vintage or a harvest of sorts in Napa and never came home. Got kidnapped by the Jackson family, stayed there for a good long time.
Almost 20 years.
Can't believe that.
But still speaks with a South African accent.
Good for him.
Still speaks fluent Afrikaans.
Does he?
Married a South African and has now come back, although he is still very much and living here in South Africa. So, and is running the operations for Jackson Family Wines locally. And it's wonderful because we're looking at all kinds of new possibilities, maybe more farms.
Have they actually bought properties in South Africa?
We have a farm in the Bunhook,
Yes, I remember
which is
that.
49 hectares. It's called Fynbos, and
That was the original Capensis vineyard.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So we actually farmed it for 2 years before it came on the market, and then we bought it. Great joy and excitement, and replanted it to about 11 hectares of Chardonnay.
Now, tell me something. Every time I speak to somebody, because I love Chardonnay, every time I speak to somebody, they say, oh, well, we get some of our grapes from Kaimansgat. Kaimansgat must be the biggest Chardonnay vineyard on planet Earth, because everybody claims to have grapes from Kaimansgat. I think you also have some grapes from Kaimansgat.
We do, and we're still waiting for them to come in. So we actually get from the very old block up in Kaimansgat. And for anybody who ever goes to the Cape and to Villiersdorp, do yourself a favor, take the Elandskloof turn off and drive in. It is the most spectacular place. And
I've been up there because, I had a share in Strandveld. So we had to go far down there on the way to the farm and what have you. But I thought that Johan Rupert had bought Kaimansgat.
He's not. He bought the farm next door to it.
Okay.
So and actually, Kaimansgat looks down on it, and you
Yeah.
can see the acorn
No, it's
orchards for the
magnificent.
truffles and things.
magnificent.
Yeah, it's called Ultima. So we get from the old block, and when I saw Johan Roo, who's the farmer, the other day, he said that he's got 2 more years, and then it will actually be old enough to be an old vine Chardonnay.
Oh, really?
And there are very few in South Africa for 2 reasons. One is Chardonnay was only planted very late in South Africa, and often they don't last. People are pulling
Pull
them out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very specialized.
Yeah.
sort of
And Johan is actually an apple and pear farmer. So,
Oh,
like
really?
Jane lost a vineyard that she was getting from Elgin because they planted apples. It just makes
They make
financial
more money.
sense.
They
Yeah.
make more money out of apples,
So
don't
all of those millions of us that buy from Johan are on our knees to
they?
kind
So
of say...
Kaimansgat must be enormous.
It's not. It's actually very small. There's the
Because
old
Bushard
Chardonnay and there's a
Finlayson-
new...
Bushard had a wine called Kaimansgat.
That's right.
Or Crocodile's Lair.
Yeah.
Then I think Kevin Grant got some grapes for his
Ataraxia.
Ataraxia Chardonnay.
Yeah. There's some
Johan said that he had for some of his Lormeron, I think, or not Lormeron, and Tony Rupert.
Well, they're getting from Ultima. The Molyneux used to buy
The
a little
Molyneux
bit,
used
but
to
they're
buy.
not buying anymore, and neither actually, and I speak under correction, is Bouchard Finlayson.
Oh, really?
But there are a few of us. So
Anyway, they are probably the nicest Chardonnay grapes in the country.
they are beautiful.
They're beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful.
So tell everybody, Capensis is a very expensive and well worth the money Chardonnay. We tell you straight up, don't think you're going to go there and buy a bottle of wine for 150 Rand, because you're not. But you are going to buy one of the premium bottles of Chardonnay in the country. And Graham was coming out here and making it, hey?
Yeah. So we started the project in 2013. It was the first vintage. So he's been flying in and out since then. And in fact, the farm is dedicated to Chardonnay, and we now have 3 different Chardonnays. So one is 100% estate fruit, vineyard specific, called Fynbos. And in fact, the Fynbos is the basis of all the wines. Capensis, which is the farm, which means from the Cape, is a blend of about 5 different areas. So Graham has an absolute passion for high altitude grapes. So we get from...
You must go and spend some time with David Nieuwoud.
Yes, absolutely.
He'll never be the same again.
He won't.
But you must spend some time with him.
So we actually have the highest Chardonnay vineyard in the Stellenbosch-Helderberg region by default, not by design. We didn't realize it. Vinpro came to tell us that. And then we've got a new wine, which is 100% expression of Stellenbosch fruit, called Saline,
there's some nice
which is
cork
much
wedge.
more pocket-friendly.
Yes. Oh, pocket friendly.
Yeah.
Stellenbosch are producing some lovely Chardonnays, you know. Much as we like to sort of label them as Cabernet kings, there's some lovely Chardonnays that are coming out of Stellenbosch, I think.
They are.
Definitely.
I mean, there's some beautiful Chardonnays just per se, and I think that Helderberg Ridge kind of area.
Yeah.
And where we are in the Bunhook, I mean, if you look at the farms where Capensis is, you know, there's Bartini, there's Oldenburg.
Oh, those wines from Oldenburg are starting to taste gorgeous.
Yeah.
Dele is smart.
Yeah.
Takara, the Lima. I mean, we can't forget Jalzi. He's been making beautiful things.
And lovely Chardonnay.
Yeah, Chardonnay forever and ever. So are you and Pete living on a farm?
No, we live in Franschhoek. And he goes to Robertson.
And you don't live on a farm either?
No, I'm in Cape Town. Yeah, for my sins. I'd love to live on a farm, but...
So is Pete vinifying and doing all his stuff at Graham-Beck?
Yeah, which is great. As I said, we have a contract there, and then I was out there last week to taste the ferments. Most of them are dry now. And this year I'm making some, because we love champagne and are quite purist in our style, we're looking a little bit of slightly different. So we're going to be doing a Meunier Pinot Noir Blanc de Noir blend, like
And
they do in
are
champagne.
any of you heading north to England to go and buy a vineyard next door to Gary Jordan?
Well, Peter has been making bubbly for 4 years. He looked for about 2 or 3 years with Anthony to buy. And I think after speaking to Gary and Kathy, understanding how difficult it is to buy property and the laws of changing stuff.
But Jordan, in his inimitable fashion, buys a property that has got heritage status. Yeah. You're not allowed to move a brick. You're not allowed to move a stone from the vineyard. You're not allowed to do a damn thing. And that he's just another one like all of you really. He just got on with it and
carries
did it.
on,
Yeah.
gets it
And
done.
I can't wait to taste something that comes out of there.
I'm so excited. I've been to Mouse Hall.
Have you? I told him I'm moving in there.
I've also, really.
Have you also booked? He said there's like a little gatehouse type thing, which could be the Dowager House. I said to him, that's mine.
Okay, we can dowager it together,
we'll
right?
dowager together, and I think it's next to the gin distillery, which is even better.
Perfect.
It is, yeah.
So now I think that what we're going to do, because I'm going to be in trouble because you've got another appointment that you have to get to. What we are going to do is we are going to definitely put some Dainty Bess and some of this into the Solid Gold shop for a month or two.
Super.
Following this thing,
great.
and then all the listeners can know what we've been talking about. That's what we'll do. Is that
Definitely,
okay?
they can go and buy a bottle and taste it themselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's been
Enjoy
such fun.
some-
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Ferreira.
Ferreira.
Another production from Solid Gold Podcasts.